7 on a minimum camp, besides like the nighttime when they're confined to their dorms. Here at this close security facility, the way they run it, these guys can pretty much talk to each other through the doors. We're not that, we only come around at least once an hour especially during like lockdown times. The pod times are kind of weird. They're like mostly supervised. There's an officer in a control center watching them. There's one of us walking around, and then at least once an hour we're getting up, we're going into the pods, checking on things, making sure everybody's okay, alive, make sure there's nothing illegal going on, which is hard to catch regardless, because they scream every time you walk into the pod, right? In the secret communications, what kind of secret communications would they pass? Well, the most common ones that I find or I catch are usually gambling fees, debts owed, which goes under gambling fees, and the last one that I usually find is like Western Union accounts. These guys are getting money from other sources besides their family most of the time, and they have to have wire transfers to get that money. So yeah, that's something we definitely look out for. The intelligence units at most of these facilities are really good about keeping up with what kind of notes we're finding and who is sending them, who's receiving them, what are they saying, So that's all intel. That's stuff way above me. I just find the notes and pass them on, But the secret communications between offenders also can very heavily transfer over to staff. Obviously, you have your 10 codes, your 10-4, your 10-6, your 10-25, all these 10 codes, but it's not hard to learn 10 codes. If I can learn them in a week at the academy and I'm not locked in a cell, 20 hours a day or whatever, I'm sure that these guys can pick up 10 codes a lot faster. So when you use 10 codes, they're already, they already know the stuff, most of them. Who doesn't know what 10-4 means, But these guys, so the states are starting to move away from 10 codes, and they're just pretty much going to just say what you need to say over the radio. If you have private information that you don't want other offenders to hear, per se, your radio has like 8 or 9 different channels. You can just tell that officer, hey, go to channel 3. And then hopefully they understand that they need to get somewhere where there are no offenders. And you can change your radio over and receive that traffic. But when you don't have that option, there was an incident the other day with me where there was a fight in the dining hall, and about 10 people out of my unit didn't get fed. So the sergeant was trying to get these guys trays, and the kitchen wasn't working with us, and pretty much just told us we're not making these trays because we need proof that they didn't eat. Fair enough. So we had a lieutenant checking through the cameras. The sergeant, while we were doing a round in this pod, came in and told these guys, like, hey, it's not looking good for your trays. I'm trying. He's pretty much just said he's trying. And these guys started, surrounding us almost. Like, these guys were pissed that we cannot get these guys trays, But they got to be mad at somebody, and it's not, specifically our fault. It's the kitchen and the fight, all these factors, but they're going to point it at you automatically because you're the first person with a badge they see, right? So they kind of start surrounding us in this pod. And the first thing I do when I walk into a pod and I start talking to offenders, or offenders start getting angry with me, is what's my out, right? Where am I going to go if it does hit the fan? I was on the first floor, pod floor, so I'm on the same floor as the exit door, but I am across the room. So if it were to pop off, that door was shut. So while these offenders were surrounding us and my sergeant across the way, I was kind of just hanging back, watching, making sure it was all kind of smooth, and it kind of started to get a little nasty. So I radioed the control center. Didn't have time for discretion, but I tried to do it as secretly as possible. I put my head down, I picked up my mic to my mouth, and I told the control center to keep my pod door open. So that way, if it did come down to it, I had a way to get out of there, right? That should always be the first thought, and that kind of ties into what we call situational awareness. Do you have a good idea of where you're at, who's around you, what potential outs or dangers are there, where can I go if I need to? You gotta take your whole surrounding in 360 degrees. It's very important. Situational awareness I take pretty seriously. I'm always watching around my back. I'm watching in front of me, behind me, side to side. I'm looking at the ground. I'm looking at places where they could potentially be hiding a weapon to use against me. Watching the body movement of offenders. When one comes up and talks to me, is there one walking up behind me? You kind of learn that, and you kind of place yourself accordingly. If an offender is walking up to me, and he may not be in the best mood, or I can't specifically tell, I will position myself so that I can either defend myself against whatever he's about to do, or I have a way that I can leave that area immediately where there is backup or help can get there faster, right? That is, saying that out loud, that sounds like it makes this job pretty scary, but that barely ever happens, even in a closed custody setting at my facility. Like I said, this is just my experiences, my opinions. I know there are prisons out there where it's still the wild, wild west, and you got fights every day, uses of force every day, whatever you have. But my facility specifically has not been that bad. There's been a few fights, but no staff injuries, not since I've been here. But yeah, it's fine as long as you're aware. His job can be really easy or really tough depending on how you decide to go about it, but you still need to be aware no matter what custody level you're at, because like I said, I've only had one actual use of force, but that was at a minimum level facility. And I've had a few close calls at the closed custody, but luckily I've been able to de-escalate the situation. That's my kind of like superpower, is I'm very good at de-escalating situations. The big talking point I really wanted to get to was morale. This is something that is very important, and it should be important to everybody. What do you do to keep your morale up? What do you do, what kind of things can I do to pretty much keep myself happy while I'm in prison? It's not too bad. I'd say the biggest thing for me was honestly having something to do outside of work. Me personally, I used to play a lot of paintball. I used to ride a lot of bikes. I say used to, but that is another story. I have this podcast, I hope now, if I can keep up with it. This is something I've been wanting to do for 2 or 3 months now, and just barely had the time and pretty much the courage to actually start it. This is weird. It's a weird topic. Everybody has their own outs. Some people, hit the bottle. Don't hit the bottle, right? Don't turn drinking into the thing that lets you get away from work. Find something else. I had paintball. I do bowling. Me and my fiance go on hikes all the time, if you can find something, even if you're sitting on the couch and you say, oh, this would be fun, but I'm too tired, or it was a long day at work, go do it. You'll feel so much better when you're doing it, and when you're done, you'll be so glad you decided not to stay home that day and just sit on your couch or do whatever. You went out and did something productive with your time, and that gave you a little bit of outside time. If you just go to prison to work and then you come home every night and that's it, you're not doing anything much more different than what these guys in prison are doing, in my opinion. I don't think that you should be doing that to yourself. I think that you should try to get out. And I know it can be hard right now with all of the COVID and lockdown and social distancing, but this is pretty late into it, and things are starting to kind of open back up. So you can definitely, and you could have always gone on walks or hikes. Even when I think some national parks were closed, we just, went on a walk around a couple blocks. It was just something to get me out of the house, get some fresh air, just talk to somebody. That's always helpful. Get your mind off of it, especially. I know it's weird saying that, talking about a podcast on my weekend, but I'm considering this therapeutic. So, find something to do outside of work. If you have anything fun that you'd like to do or have always wanted to do it. The first thing I did when I first started is I started on night shifts. I worked on night shifts for not long, just a couple weeks, and I was not happy. Didn't see my family. I was doing what I was saying earlier. I was going to work and then coming home and doing nothing. Because she wasn't there. By the time she got home, I had to be at work. All this stuff. So, the first thing I did was I switched to a shift that worked better for my family and my, just helped me out better. It was just better times. I went to first shift. Everybody's dream shift, pretty much. I don't care about the shift differential. I don't care about, whatever, overtime. I don't care about any of that. I'm an officer that likes to go home at the end of the day. If I can help not staying, I'm going to try to not stay. Not everybody's like that, and I appreciate the people who like the overtime and stuff, because usually they'll take my overtime days that they want and I don't want. So I appreciate you. There's always a need for people who are willing to do the little extra work. That sounds horrible to say about me, but I just like going home at the end of the day. I'd rather not spend any more than 8.5 hours in prison. So switch to a shift that you like, that works better for your times, gives you time to do whatever you want to do on your days off or your just between shifts. I really like it. I get home about an hour and a half before my wife, my fiance, and I just have that hour and a half to myself every day. And then when she gets home, we'll go on a walk or go out and do something, just something to get out. And then on my weekends, I have Monday, Tuesday, so I'm home alone. So this